put ourselves on mute.
We're still in our little group, right?
The folks are entering in now.
Okay. James, just let me know when we're ready.
We're green to go.
Translator.
Yeah, let me look for the translator. 1 second. Translator on.
James, you'll let me know when we're ready to begin.
We're good to go.
Okay, are we recording?
Recording in progress.
Yes, there we are. Yes.
All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Health Impact Assessment Public Engagement Session number 2 on the topic of the Southside Recycling Permit application. We very much appreciate all of you for joining us this evening. And before we dive into any of the evening's content, I wanted to first take a moment to apologize on behalf of the department for the confusion related to this meeting. I think as many of you know, our original intention was to do a virtual session at the beginning of December. But after hearing voluminous community feedback after the first meeting that we had not gone far enough in this process to really center community voice and community perspective as part of the HIA decision-making, we thought it was important to offer an in-person session. And so in an effort to make sure we could be really thoughtful about approaching that in-person meeting, we postponed to this evening, and we had attempted to secure a location for an in-person meeting. Because of the surge in COVID cases, we did not feel that we could responsibly offer an in-person meeting at this time. And with other venue challenges, we thought that the virtual format was most appropriate. So at every step of the way, we were attempting to really hear and respond to community considerations. But we understand that by doing that, we created a lot of confusion about the where and the when and the what of this meeting. And so we do hear and we do recognize and we do acknowledge the hardship that we have put people through just to be here with us tonight. And so we thank those of you who were able to attend, particularly those of you who are residents of the Southeast Side, who are working hard to make your voices heard. And we commit to continuing to do better in our efforts to center all of you as part of this process. So again, I am Megan Cunningham. I'm the Managing Deputy Commissioner for Strategy, Development, and External Affairs here at the Chicago Department of Public Health. And I wanted to just begin by talking about our objectives for today's session. There's really only one. We felt like the last session was freighted with so much content and too much of the health department just presenting to you all as community residents. So tonight we are going to flip that script, and really we are here in a listening mode. We are not going to be presenting new content on the HIA this evening. Instead, we are going to be seeking your direct input as people who have lived experience as residents of Southeast Side communities, and really hear from you on key questions. And this input will inform the HIA and our final report and recommendations. We want to acknowledge again that people have shared feedback on this permit in many ways, and we continue to thank you for showing up for these meetings. For tonight, we're really not here to debate one another. We know that there are strong opinions on both sides of this permit question, but we really are intending to hold space for real, authentic, genuine conversation. And that means offering a space where you can share candidly on your perspectives on this permit, whether you support it or whether you oppose it. And all of this will be taken as data really to inform the report. So we hope that you all are joining us tonight in that spirit of sharing, and we are here to listen and to learn from you. We're also deeply grateful to our facilitators for tonight, Norma Celadon and Consuela Brown, our expert public engagement professionals who have been helping us to design this session in a way that is going to really allow these voices to be heard most effectively. So I want to give them a warm welcome into this space and offer you, Norma and Consuela, a moment to introduce yourselves to the group.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Just a little bit of background about myself. I have a long history of service to the community in various capacities in both the public and nonprofit sectors, in communities across the city, in areas of education, women's issues, leadership development, and race equity. And my co-facilitator, Consuela Brown, has also a background in grant making, coaching, community organizing, and is also a professor at Loyola and Dominican universities. And we mentioned this because it is our pleasure to serve you today as facilitators, but want you to know that in all of our work, lifting community voices is vital and it's not negotiable. So we hope to be able to facilitate that tonight. I will be talking a little bit more about what this space looks like, or what we intended to look like. But before that, I want to hand it back over to Megan, who's going to give us a high-level overview of the background of what brings us here. So back to you, Megan.
Do we want to spend a moment on the group agreements and norms here, Norma, just up top as we're
Sure.
bringing people in? Mhm.
Sure. So one of the things that we find is important that we need to talk about some agreements when we gather together. It's important that we are all on the same space, and we want to convey to you how we wish to engage with you. So I want to go quickly over the ground rules. You're going to hear me repeat these at several points before we start the sessions, and then also during the breakout sessions as well. Your wonderful facilitators are also going to review these as well. But want to make sure that we started with these. And first and foremost, be present. We thank you for your precious time, but we also want to make sure that while you are here, you try to be as present as possible. We know that you're probably working from home or joining us during dinner time. Please make sure that you silence cell phones when the mute goes off. Take space, make space is about sharing your thoughts and opinions. We want to make sure that we get to as many of you as possible, but we want to make sure that we are giving others a chance to do the same. Some folks are not as ready to share their thoughts or may need to take time to do that. We want to make sure that we are encouraging everyone to do that. The Vegas rule is about taking learning with you and leaving names and stories here. I statements refers to our request for you to listen with grace and speak from your own experience, as opposed to making blanket statements about everybody in general. And then one that we have borrowed from the youth movement is don't yuck my yum. Be respectful to each other's feelings, perspectives, abilities, and experiences. Be curious about others and not judgmental. We know that we might have varying degrees of opinions about the situations that we are addressing tonight. And then taking care of yourself is important. Make sure that if you need breaks, that you take them. Sometimes these conversations can bring up different things. And so we want to make sure that you are at your healthiest while you're in the space. Having courageous conversations, staying engaged, and speaking your truth and experiencing discomfort is something that we can expect. But we also need to accept that this is also part of lifelong learning and trying to move towards a place of working together. And then finally, assuming best intentions. There are a number of people who really have a vision of an equitable future. And we hope that you're going to be seeing some of that as we move along today. We're all doing our best with the skills that we have, and we hope that you will join us with those same sentiments. I did want to make emphasis on the fact that we want and we encourage folks to speak from their experience. However, we also want this to be a safe and productive space. If participants cannot engage in ways that are respectful of facilitators, of each other, we are going to ask you to please be aware of that. And while this might be our last result, we also want to make sure that you know that if this is the disruptions come to a point where we cannot continue discussions, and we will ask you to leave those sessions. So again, this is more about making sure that we have as many voices that want to speak do so. So I will again come back and remind us of those, but now I think I can hand it back over to you, Megan.
Yes, thank you, Norma. So this is an overview of our agenda for the evening. We're kicking off here with our welcome and recap of the HIA process to date, just to refresh all of us as we enter into tonight's conversation about where we've been and where we're going. Then Norma will give us an overview of how we will lead our small group discussions this evening. And then the bulk of our time together here will actually be in facilitated small group breakout sections where we'll all be working through the same sort of 4 key questions as a structured opportunity to hear from all of you. And then we'll come back together as a group at about 7:15 to harvest all of those themes from your discussions so that you have the benefit of hearing just a snippet of what was talked about in all of the various rooms. And then we'll have a very brief closeout and discuss next steps. So this is our expectation for the time together today. Again, this conversation is really meant to be much more interactive. we're doing the very best that we can to recreate the conditions that we would have had if we were all together in person on the southeast side tonight. So with that, I will do a very brief recap of the health impact assessment process. And I'll start with just a reminder of what is a health impact assessment. We discussed this in some detail at our last session, and all of those materials are available on our website. But just as a refresh, a health impact assessment is a defined set of steps and a process that helps us to determine the potential effects of a proposed policy, plan, or project on health. And the health impact assessment process is meant to engage stakeholders in that, in the various steps, and to ensure that community voices are really being heard and valued as part of the process. So that is one of our central tenets tonight, along with our continuing commitment to applying environmental justice and racial equity principles and practices in this process, from the way in which we collect and analyze data to the way in which we conduct this sort of qualitative piece of our assessment, to ultimately then informing our recommendations. Just a brief word about RMG, Southside Recycling. Reserve Management Group is an Ohio-based metal recycling company. They purchased recycling facility assets from General Iron, which was then operating in Lincoln Park. They are now seeking a permit to operate a recycling facility on South Burley, and we've got a little bit of a site map here for your reference. RMG has operated recycling facilities in the ward for more than 30 years, and this particular proposal and the operation of this facility would accept scrap metal, including end-of-life vehicles, for processing and recycling, which is an important component of managing waste in the city of Chicago and promoting sustainability. CDPH is conducting then this health impact assessment to inform our decision on whether to issue RMG a large recycling facility permit. And as we've discussed, this permitting process has been dating back to about 2019. You see a timeline here that shows the many steps that have been taken to this point, beginning with receiving zoning approval and the determination that this land use for large recycling facility was appropriate. The Department of Buildings issued permits, as well as the Illinois EPA, prior to then the adoption of CDPH's large recycling facility rules, which are really intended to govern how these sorts of facilities can operate and what sort of limitations they have and what sort of rules and requirements they must meet. At that point, even in advance of Southside Recycling submitting their permit application, CDPH began our engagement process. Since that time, we've hosted 2 large community town halls. We had an extended public comment period. And then in May of this year, we suspended our permit review. And at the request of the US EPA, we embarked on our health impact assessment process. And that's where we are now. We are in the midst of conducting the health impact assessment. And tonight's activities are part of the input to inform and then ultimately to create a report on all of our findings, which will be made publicly available, and all of those methods will be shared with you. So the final output of all of this is a decision on whether to issue the large recycling facility permit to RMG. We want to reiterate that there are many inputs to the health impact assessment, some of which are complete and some of which are now in progress. There are permit application materials that were submitted by the company, all of those public inputs that we just discussed, from community town halls to public comments. And then we have been embarked on this work in close partnership with the US EPA, and we've appreciated their support on practice tools and guidance on how to structure the HIA and the methods that we are using here. We also are incorporating findings from the US EPA's air quality report. So all of those inputs are already being looked at and analyzed and fed into the health impact assessment. In progress now are additional analyses to help us understand the current conditions and the potential impacts of the Southside recycling operation. And then, of course, these additional engagement sessions that we're having with all of you. So where are we in the HIA process? In our first session, we discussed steps 1, 2, and 3, screening, scoping, and the beginning of the assessment steps. And all of the materials related to those meetings are available on our website. Last month, we really talked about the quantitative data, the numbers, the statistics, and the findings from those pieces of our baseline assessment. Tonight, we're continuing with that assessment phase, but we're really looking at using more qualitative methods. And that means hearing community voice to better understand how you think about the benefits and burdens of the proposed recycling facility. And all of this input is going to be analyzed and presented as part of the HIA report. So we're really combining that quantitative data with the community perspective. And that is why we are so appreciative of those of you who are community residents that are joining with us here tonight to help us inform this HIA. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Norma so that she can talk a bit more about what we can expect this evening before we go into small group breakout sessions.
Thank you, Megan. Before we talk a little bit about the breakout sessions, I wanted to talk a little bit about equity. We know that we are living in heightened times where conversations about equity are happening at different levels with corporations in our neighborhoods, in our schools. And we are all looking for evidence of that. So it is not enough to talk about things, but we want to see action. I really do hope that you are able to see a little bit of those efforts by the city. I know that we have histories of partnerships and conversations or dialogues with the city that may have been different in the past. And again, hoping that you will see things a little bit different. A little bit more about that is you will see there's over 150 people on this call. And we love that so many of you are eager to participate in this important conversation. We do hope to get to hear from all of you this evening at some point. We want to remind you that this meeting is intended first and foremost as a way to directly hear from the people most impacted by the RMG Southside Recycling proposal, which is the community members of the Southeast Side. To make sure that we maximize our time together, in a few minutes, our community members are going to be directed to small groups so that we intend to have some more intimate space so that we get people a chance to speak. You will be sent to breakout rooms with amazing, very dedicated facilitators who will be guiding you through 4 questions. And each of the group, you're going to find a facilitator and a note taker. We are also going to use a tool called Jamboard, and I'm going to walk us through that so you are familiar with that. If possible, we want people to write in their own notes and their own suggestions, their own answers to these questions. If that is not possible, either because you're not joining with a device that allows you to do that, we are going to be happy to take those notes and place them up for you. You're going to be able to see what is being placed on those forms. And again, we'll speak a little bit about that system. If you are not able to understand that system or to use it, we really would rather that you engage in participating and giving us your thoughts as opposed to trying to figure these things out. Additionally, I will be weaving in and out of some of the group discussions to make sure that everything is running smoothly in case you see me pop in. If at any point you need anything while in these groups, please drop a note in the chat and we'll make sure to try to answer those questions. We're primarily going to be using Jamboard technology, but we also want you to use the chat features or raise your hand or chime in for conversations as well. We have disabled the microphone capabilities right now because we're in a large group, but in the breakout rooms, you'll be able to unmute yourselves and share verbally your thoughts. My colleague Consuela Brown is going to facilitate a town hall style session for those who are not Southside community residents. And in this format, you'll also have an opportunity to comment on the same 4 questions that are being proposed or posed in the breakout sessions. And again, in addition to providing comments today's session, we are going to be offering the ability for written comments through a survey, and we're going to provide a link to that in the chat box. And this is for anybody, whether you're a resident or not. There may be things that you think about after tonight that you'd like to share, and so we welcome you to share additional thoughts through that process. And then after the small group discussion, we're all going to come back and do a short share out so that you are able to hear what folks in other breakout rooms have talked about. And so we'll do probably like a 1 or 2 minute snippet of what was shared in those groups. And then it is our hope to close at around 7:30. Okay. If I'm able to, I would love to have an opportunity to share a little bit about Jamboard. So may I present, Megan? Okay, so let me do that. Give me one moment, please.
And Norma, as you're switching over, I might just quickly address some of the questions in the chat box about capacity for this evening. Sure. Tonight's conversation really was intended primarily for Southeast Side community residents, and we had planned for a capacity of about 150 residents because that is what we can accommodate in the breakout sessions while keeping those groups small and ensuring that there's appropriate facilitation. So that was our primary purpose for tonight. Beyond that, we did allow additional stakeholders to register, and we have welcomed you in, and we will create a town hall style format, as Norma said, for you to participate. But we are really focused on hearing directly from those residents tonight.
Thanks, Megan. So what you see here on screen right now is Jamboard. This is one of the features of the Google Suite, and this is a tool that we are using to capture your thoughts today. If we were in person, we would be using poster paper and probably sticking on the wall and giving you some sticky notes so that you can put your thoughts down and stick them onto the poster under each of the 4 questions. This works in a similar way. Again, just a really quick tutorial so that you know what to expect. On the left side here are your different writing utensils. We're going to ask you to focus here, which are the sticky notes. When you click on this, this is going to pop up and you are going to write. So the question here is, what is your favorite part of the holidays? So I am going to put here familia. And so once you type in what you want to type, then you hit save. The sticky note will be created and it's here in the background. If you want to add a different note or you want to add a different color, you can do that too. So for us, for me, it's making tamales with my sister. So I'm going to be adding that. I'm going to save it. I don't have anything else to add, so I will hit cancel. So oftentimes these will be crowded on top of each other. So there may be someone here who is going to be moving things around so that everybody can see the rest of the notes. And again, here you are going to, we might have different pages for you to run through. You're going to get directions from your facilitator when you need to move to a different page. So again, you'll be getting assistance once you're in your breakout rooms. If you need any help, you just make sure that you add that. But again, I just want to emphasize, we don't want you to spend too much time trying to figure this out. We want you to really invest time in giving us or sharing your answers on these important questions. If you are not able to figure this out, if you're not able to access it, perhaps because you're joining via phone, then just let your facilitator know. And they are going to be calling on you so that they make sure to pick up your answers, and the note taker will be adding those notes here. Again, the note taker is going to be projecting on screen so that you can see where your notes are being added. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, come back to our conversation. Again, want to do a quick reminder of our ground rules. 1 second, let me get back there.
I can pull those up if you'd like, Norma.
Okay, thank you. So again, be present. Make sure that you take space, that you speak up if you don't normally, and make space for other people. Make sure that you respect confidentiality. Use I statements and speak from your own experience. Be respectful to each other's feelings. Take care of yourself. Have courageous conversations and assume the best intentions. Just a quick reminder, your facilitator and note taker will be present in each of your breakout rooms, and they're going to guide participants through the dialogue process. Don't get angry at them if they move on to another question. They're going to make sure that we use the time as wisely as possible. There's going to be 4 different questions, and each of them will be allotted 15 minutes. Again, the note taker is there to mostly capture your answers and make sure that those get recorded. In the session also, just like in this larger session, the session will be recorded. And again, that is to make sure that we are capturing everybody's comments. The 4 areas of questioning, I believe if you received an invitation, you were also informed of what these areas are. The first one is a question around benefits. The second one is about burdens. The fourth about lived experience and how all of this impacts you or your family or your community personally. And then finally, looking forward, what is it that you want the city to know moving forward around policy or any processes that you want changed? And if you have any recommendations to that regard. I am trying to see if there's anything else that you should know. I don't think so. So I think that if we are ready, then we can see if we are ready to send folks. Is there anything, Megan, else that you would like folks to know?
I do just want to sort of describe how folks were placed into breakout rooms. At the time of registration, we asked for people to self-identify the zip code of their home address. And if your home address indicated that you were a resident of the Southeast Side, then we have pre-assigned you to a breakout room. If there are people who are joining today who did not register or who did not include their zip code at the time of registration, but who are residents of the Southeast Side, we will give you a moment to let us know that in the chat, and we will try to assign you to a breakout room in real time as we can. And again, as Norma said, those non-residents who are welcomed in here with us tonight, you will remain in this room and we will have a separate facilitated discussion with those people today. Okay, I don't think I have anything else, Norma.
I just want to let folks know that we will be keeping time, and so we will be sending messages to your breakout rooms just to make sure that you are staying, and we'll let you know when it's time to move on to the next question. Again, please do not stress out about the technology. If that's something that you can't figure out, we would rather help you record your statements as opposed to you trying to figure things out. We did want to do something that is interactive. We wanted to make sure to give you the power of writing your own comments. But again, if that is not possible, then we are happy to take that information for you. I'm not sure if there are any questions in the chat about either Jamboard or the design of our breakouts. We are checking those. Okay, and I'm looking through it and I'm not sure that I see any questions.
There aren't any, Norma. We can proceed.
Okay. So then if we are ready, then you will be sent to a breakout room or you will stay in the main session depending on your classification as resident or not.
That's
And
right.
I will note, we had a question in the chat box of will the breakout rooms be recorded? I believe it would be beneficial to see all the groups as this is a public forum. And yes, each of the breakout rooms will be recorded. Your facilitator will speak more about that with you as you enter into the session. And all of those recordings will be posted on our website. So although you will be assigned to one particular breakout room, you would have the opportunity to go back later and to view others to the extent that you are interested. And again, the breakout sessions are intended for community residents. So for people who are identifying as living on the southeast side, we're using the honor system here. So if you were not pre-assigned to a breakout room, but if you are a resident of the southeast side, please just let us know that in the chat. And then as soon as we're able, we'll get you assigned to a breakout room.
Hi, everyone. This is Yvonne. I'm the facilitator for Group 5. We're just going to give a couple more seconds for everyone to join our group.
Hey, Ivan, while we're waiting, I just want to thank you for helping me with the access problem.
Thank you for being patient, Roberto. I was trying to make sure that we had as many of our residents in our breakout rooms, and so it was a nice little list. So I apologize that it took so long to get you in.
You, hey, Red, I'm sorry, this might be a weird question, but were you at the Invest Southwest meetings? You look kind of familiar.
I've been with CDPH for about almost 7 years. I may have been.
Oh no, not you, Ivan. The gentleman that's there, Rayed, the note taker.
Oh, no,
He looks
I
kind of
was not.
familiar. Okay, sorry, you look familiar for some reason. I'm not sure where, but yeah.
I'm looking at the number of people who are not assigned to rooms yet, and I have a feeling that some of those individuals are supposed to be in our room. So I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. In the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Just first a reminder that we're going to record this session so that everyone who'd like to listen to what occurred in our breakout room has an opportunity to do so. So just so you know, I'm pressing record now.
Recording in progress.
All right. Again, my name is Yvonne Sambalin. I am the Director of Community Engagement here at CDPH. I'd like to also introduce Raed Mansour, who is our note taker. You can wave, Raed. He will be taking notes as individuals speak. I am going to put the Jamboard in the chat. You can click on the Jamboard. And if you have a hard time, please do not feel frustrated. We will be able to capture your information. That is what Raed is here for, to support in those that aren't able to actually access the Jamboard for whatever reason. But we do want to capture your information. So please feel free to put your information in the chat. I will also encourage that if you have a comment, you can also unmute yourself. I do not have to do that for you. You are not obviously held to an unmuted opportunity. But please, again, as a reminder, be mindful of everyone who is in the room and be thoughtful. And with that said, I'd like to remind everybody about the engagement norms that were discussed between Norma and Megan. Quickly, with the show of hands, do we all agree to the norms that we should follow? There's a raise hand button. Great.
I will say, Yvonne, it's the part of the agreement was, quote, the Vegas rule and confidentiality. And
Yes.
so I hope that's removed in the future, because that isn't the truth if we're recording it. And I also think that's just important to name.
Just so that you're aware, my understanding is that the recording will not show names. And so that is our intent. Hi, Mr. Davis. Okay, moving forward. We want to get started by asking if you're willing to share in your chat the responses to the following questions. How are you connected to the South Side of Chicago? If you could put that in the chat, we would appreciate it. You can also add, what are your hopes for this evening? So I'll just read the ones that I'm seeing pop up. Roberto says that he lives on the site, near the site. Liliana is an East Side resident. Matt is a chaplain for to the community Southeast Environmental Task Force. And Mitchell Joseph, you're an employee of RMG. And he is saying that he hopes that for the first time to be able to actually engage with some of those opposed to the business. Does anyone else want to say what their hopes are? Oh, here, Matt, thank you. Clean air and address the historic impacts of legacy and ongoing pollution, especially their impact on public health. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you all for answering this question. I really appreciate it. So I'm gonna, Liliana, the hope is to have a transparent and open conversation. Thank you, Liliana, I agree, thank you. Our first question is we're gonna give each other 15 minutes to actually answer, which will probably leave us, because there's only 7 of us in this, actually 5 of us, not including Riot and myself. So that leaves it for a little bit more time for you all to answer this question. I'm gonna put the Jamboard on here because we'd like for you to respond to these questions on the Jamboard itself. So I'm putting the link.
I just did that, Yvonne, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. If you guys can click on the link, you'll see the first question. If you notice on the left-hand side, there are a few icons you can click into. The fourth one, that if you put your cursor over, it says sticky note. If you click on that, you'll see that you can actually put your comment on the sticky note. You can do whatever color makes you comfortable. And once I'm going to put a test so that you see what this looks like.
I'm going to share my screen so you can
Thank
see.
you.
See if that shows.
So I just put a test so you could see what it would look like. I'm going to remove it because I really would like to make space for you all to make a comment. Okay. So our first question, we have 15 minutes to go around the room to answer. Number one, benefits. Based on what you have heard thus far, please share some of the potential benefits of this proposal on you and your community. Who specifically benefits? Go ahead and use the sticky. And if you do not have access to the sticky, please, to the Jamboard, please let us know and we will put the information on there for you.
Yvonne, the sticky isn't working for me. I can't actually type anything in there.
That's okay. If you can't type on your sticky, would you like to tell me what it is and I can do the sticky for you?
Sure.
Yeah, I can type it too.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I feel that that other companies that are looking to abuse the city permitting procedures would benefit if this permit is allowed. And that's because specifically RMG owns multiple sites on the property, and each has its own separate permits that they apply for. Whereas if RMG as a whole would apply for that permit, they would not be able to comply with the rules, if you will.
I'm sorry, who was that speaking? I couldn't see as the screen's being shared.
It's Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Mitchell Joseph. As I said, I'm an employee of the company. And my question in response to your statement, Robert, would be, what are you basing that statement on? That RMG's companies as a whole would not be in compliance? Because I would tell you that it is not true. Our other companies are all properly permitted, as they have been for multiple decades that they've been in operation. And Southside Recycling obviously will not be operating until it is properly permitted as well. There is no indication from any regulator that even if they were to be compliant, that they would.
Mitchell, I'm sorry. I think you misunderstand what I said. And that's okay. It's fine. Let me reiterate what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is that RMG has multiple sites, and each of the sites has its own separate permits that they apply for. However, cumulatively, if you take the combined total, if RMG applied as a single site, they likely would not be able to apply for the same permits that they currently are able to receive.
You've now said likely not been able to. Before you were sure. Now,
well, I could be sure again. Do you want me to be sure again?
Let me ask you this.
Look,
when you say
Mitchell, you're trying to argue
this is
semantics
a reminder
here.
to please be respectful and not speak over each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. But Mitchell, you know, we could play on words here, but we're trying to discuss this as rational people, and I would appreciate if you talk to me and we discuss this based on the arguments and not trying to look for little semantics that you feel you can get away with. Okay? Please understand. I live right by the facility that your company is looking to build. I have no problem with industry. Okay. I'm very concerned because your company, again, owns several sites that they have near my home. Okay. Now, I am concerned because your company has demonstrated in its operations of a very similar shredder on the north side that they are incapable of doing so without explosions and without other issues happening. Okay? So I have very, very real concerns. Now, I appreciate the fact that you're employed for them. I understand that. I'm not trying to affect your job at all, but please understand my family lives here. I live here. Our health and our well-being is of concern. Our property values are of concern. So I understand again your employment, but please also understand my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Robert. Uh,
I ask Robert one more question because there was something that I'm unclear on that he was stating.
Okay, Mitchell, I'm going to ask, because Matt has his hand raised.
Okay.
So I would like for Matt to go ahead and make his statement.
Thanks, Yvonne. And I appreciate Roberto's calm willingness to discuss this, and I share his concern for our community. I served at a parish for 3 years in Hegwish, and now I serve as a community chaplain. And in every household which I was charged, there are family members or people in that household with some sort of disability, some sort of rare cancer, some sort of chronic health condition. And then I also noticed the impacts of the legacy of the steel industry and the ongoing pollution. And so the conversation about compliance with EPA permitting, although important, falls short of measuring the health impact because that we are talking about cumulative impacts of legacy pollution. Because Mitchell, I don't know if you know this or you live in the neighborhood, but much of the neighborhood was built on wetlands that was filled with steel slag before the industry was regulated. And so when I ask who does this benefit, to bring it back to this conversation, I think it fundamentally benefits the people who own the most shares and make the most money at RMG General Iron. It benefits the owners of the steel industry and their shareholders. And it benefits pharmaceutical companies who make money off of asthma medication and COPD medication. And so I'd invite Mitchell to take, if you're not from the community, I invite you to take a less defensive stance and really hear out people's concerns, because people in our neighborhood share concerns with me all the time about their health, and I believe them and I take them seriously.
Thank you for your statement, Matt. Mitchell, would you like to say something now? You're on mute if you're speaking.
Thank you. I forgot I had done that. Matt, I think I would say that I am here figuring things out. And I have obviously followed this story and read your concerns and others' concerns. What I think the problem is that we as RMG and Southside Recycling are being unfairly grouped with the legacy pollution. I'm very aware that the Southeast side had many steel mills dating back to the 1800s.
Well, RMG has violated the EPA at your Northside facility multiple times. I believe after RMG had purchased General Iron from the Labcon family, I believe there was a settlement of around $500,000 with the EPA that was released with a consent decree sometime of summer or spring this year. So to clarify, there have been EPA violations. It may not have had a huge impact on public health, but please don't misrepresent these allegations as there were some.
Matt, I appreciate you interrupting me. Thank you. It's nice when the rules apply to just you guys and not me when I get to speak. So anyway, going back to what I said, I'm well aware that steel mills have a 100+ year legacy on the southeast side of Chicago. We operate on former steel mill land that, were we not operating there, had we not invested millions and millions of dollars over decades in that area, it would be left most likely as a Superfund site that needs to be cleaned up. Instead, that was done by us, and it's now being put to productive use in recycling, which I would hope we can all agree is a worthwhile pursuit that protects the Earth's natural resources and reduces energy consumption and reduces pollution by reducing the consumption of energy from mining and steel making by using those recycled commodities rather than virgin materials from the earth. So I'm well aware of the steel mill legacy. And of course, in the 1800s, there wasn't much regulation of the steel mills. It was the 1800s. The thing is now is that industry, including ours, operates under pretty strict regulations. I mean, the city's new large recycling facility rules, which are the ones we are applying for a permit under, are some of, if not the strictest regulations on an operation of this kind in the nation. I mean, you can go compare to anywhere, including California, which, you know, I think we all understand what that means. And it compares pretty tightly, the Chicago rules. RMG and Southside Recycling, our permit application has met and surpassed everything in those rules. That is not, you know, in contention here. The city has not said that we have not met those. They have instead, you know, asked the EPA for cover, which has led us to this.
First, Mitchell, I want to apologize if you felt like you were slighted and that the rules didn't apply to you. It was truly not my intent. But as a reminder, I'm going to say it again. Please raise your hand when you want to speak, and please allow the person to finish their comment. Someone had their hand raised. I don't know if you lowered it.
I did. I lowered it because I
Robert,
think I'm ready for the
You
next
raise your
question.
hand. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had raised it, but I think, you know, in interest of time, I'm ready for the next question. So that's fine.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left with this question. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment? Thank you, Robert. Okay. Then in the interest of time, I'm sorry.
Can I also add, just I'm taking notes on these sticky pads. If I misrepresented anything that was said, just let me know. I'm trying to capture the discussion.
Thank you, Red. LC Davis, Mr. Davis, you have your hand raised. Is it based on this question?
No, it's based on the question just of, I am an employee of General Iron, and I've been with the company for a while. And but I was moving south to the south side. I'm still with the company, and I think that we help the community. That's all we do as far as recycling. That's what we do. We recycle, and we help. I mean, we carry on. So I'm sitting here listening to you all, and concerning being in the business of recycling. I think that it's a help to me as well as my family, and I want to continue going. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Davis. Roberto, you have your hand up, and
Yeah.
we will end with you on this question because we are low on time. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So in response to Mitchell, listen, man, I get it. Like I get it. You know, a job is you know, we all need work, man. And I don't think like I'm trying to argue against that, but you have to understand this is where I live, right? And you have all these polluting facilities that are one on top of the other. And with this permit specifically, this permit allows companies, if this permit is allowed, other companies can sit there and repeat what RMG is doing anytime they want to increase the amount of pollution that they want to have in my area, that my family has to breathe. Okay? So again, man, I'm not trying to take away from your work, But you got to also understand, this is our lives, this is my children's lives. This is, the things that we have to deal with, right? And again, I'm not opposed to industry, but you also got to understand we got plenty of land in the area. I mean, we got the old USX site. We got, there's places in Northwest Indiana that are pretty deserted, places in the South Suburb. This is not the only place they could have built this. So there was a specific decision that they made to try to increase their profits where they wanted to build right next to their other facilities. Now, again, going back to my initial concern with the city permitting process as a whole, is that this company, had they applied for that permit under one single company, they would have had to met more stringent regulations because a lot more pollution would have been coming from that single company. However, they have divided the pollution between multiple companies, each getting its own permit. And that, my friend, is not fair. That's not right. This single company is going to be emitting way more than a lot of other companies that would have applied by the rules for a single entity because they've divided it amongst 4 different entities.
Roberto,
And this is
I'm
in
gonna-
my
I'm
neighborhood.
going to have to ask you to end there because we really need to get to the next question. If we have more time at the end, you can continue your statement. I apologize for cutting you off.
That's okay.
Mitchell, if you could
Thank
hold
you.
your question, we're going to move on to the next.
But I would like to respond to that at some point because I think it's a vast misrepresentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mitchell, you are also welcome to put it in the chat and we will make sure that it gets on the city board because it will be noted. Thank you. Next question. I need you to change it. Thank you. Burdens. Based on what you have heard thus far, please share some of the potential burdens of this proposal on you and your community. Who specifically is burdened? Again, if you can use the Jamboard. If not, you can also use the chat. I will also open it up for a statement. Mitchell, would you like to make a statement? Your hand is still up, or is your hand up from the last question?
You put it down. That was the last one.
Okay, thank you. So if you're able to use the Jamboard, if not, feel free to speak, and Raed will write the information on the sticky on your behalf. Go ahead, Matt.
Great. I think the conversation around burdens and I think the greater conversation around legacy pollution and cumulative impacts of ongoing pollution, because there are over 100 industries with IEPA permits to emit, which is one of the permits that RMG has. On the large recycling facility permit, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, they say that their estimates have 30 micrograms per liter of particulate matter, 10 per year on an annual average. The annual average in that own application at the PM10 sensor at George Washington High School is already 77 micrograms per cubic meter. 77 micrograms per cubic meter is over, I believe in an annual standard, is 25 above the World Health Organization standards. Now, the United States doesn't adhere to the World Health Organization standards, and we only have a 24-hour average threshold, which is 150 micrograms per liter squared. And so that threshold is the only countries with thresholds that high are China and Russia. And so when we talk about environmental standards, European Union nations like Bulgaria have stricter PM10 regulations. Now, because that level is already so high and indicated as dangerous by public health scholars, the World Health Organization, and other regulatory agencies, any increase in particulate matter exposure has increased health risks. And so when it's already a lot of a bad thing, far more than I imagine in many communities in the United States, especially majority white communities, and especially communities with a median household income of over $100,000. But this is all to say that that's not the reality on the Southeast side. And what people are saying is no more pollution. And 30 micrograms per liter is more pollution and will exacerbate existing health conditions. And so, yes, I agree, recycling is important and that we need to reuse these metals. But what we're also saying is no more in this community, because there is already enough and we cannot continue putting more particulate matter into the air. So the burden would be increased health impacts on already existing health problems in the community. So it has a huge impact on public health. But I think all of those details are really important too for this conversation, because sometimes we get lost in the wonky terms, as I do, but that's how the application looks.
Matt, Liliana is asking that you slow down a little bit in your speaking, and also for the sake of trying to capture your information, I'm asking that everyone kind of remember that. Okay. Mitchell, you have your hand raised. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Was that a mistake, Mitchell? You're on mute.
Yep, sorry, I did that again. Matt, I'm actually going to agree with you that the southeast side is overburdened and has been overburdened. Here is where we depart from one another. Obviously, there's been a well-documented history of pollution and environmental issues on the southeast side. You have the pet coke issue, you have the manganese leaching, you have the history of early steel mills that were heavy emitters. The difference is that, again, we as Southside Recycling are subject to the most stringent set of regulations that this country has on this type of operation. And our application has met and exceeded all of them. So while I understand you saying no more pollution, why is the target then not the currently existing businesses who are causing the current emissions of particulate matter, rather than the new business, which has been subject to and has an application that exceeds? And if we are in operation and are unable to meet those standards, we will be shut down immediately because there is 24/7 air monitoring on our site. Why is that the target rather than the companies currently operating who have created the current conditions? And I will point out, you could easily turn that around and say, well, RMG's been operating there for a number of decades. That's absolutely true. That being said, all of our existing businesses, as I pointed out earlier in response to Robert's statement, are properly permitted and have never been the target of any of these past actions by the community. We're not involved in pet coke processing. We're not involved in manganese processing. None of the other things that the southeast side has been overburdened with historically connect to RMG's recycling businesses.
Thank you, Mitchell. Roberto, you have your hand is up.
Yeah. I think that the issue though is that RMG operates multiple entities, and again, I'm not opposed to industry. However, I think RMG has demonstrated a history through its operations of General Iron that it is not a responsible party. I mean, we can see the violations that occurred on the north side, and there are multiple emissions that will come from this site that, as Matt has been saying, contribute to the cumulative impact of hazards that we have to suffer through. Now, there's a number of issues again, specifically with what is going on in terms of the permitting process that I hope that the city is going to consider. RMG has had multiple violations within the past years that have demonstrated that, especially when it comes to the shredder, which is a new venture for it, has demonstrated issues. It has demonstrated, the explosion on the north side. How can we forget that? Now, the city rules specifically state that if a facility, if the applicant or any officer of the applicant or any persons having control of applicant or any of its operations has within the past 3 years violated any federal, state, or local laws, regulations, standards, permit conditions, or ordinances in the operation of any junk facility, recycling facility, or any other type of waste or recyclable materials handling facility or site, including but not limited to the operation of a junk recycling or waste handling facility without required permits, that the city can refuse and deny the permits. And again, this is under the Chicago publication titled Recycling Permits 2112 and 11.4. So on page 3 of the publication, section 4, it discusses exactly what I just mentioned. RMG has demonstrated that they are not responsible owners of such a facility. And I do not want this by my home because, again, it impacts our property values, it impacts our livelihoods, it impacts our lives, our health, the health of our children and our families. And this is what I am concerned about.
Roberto, thank you very much. I'm going to ask that Mitchell, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. So Robert, do you prefer Robert or Roberto? I'm sorry.
Either or is fine, Mitchell.
Okay, thank you. So I believe what you're referring to was the settlement of prior violations on the north side. Is that correct? There was an EPA, I'm blanking on the exact term.
Mitchell, why are we going to try to dismiss what
Roberto, let
happened?
Mitchell, Roberto,
Well,
please let
I'm sorry, he
Mitchell
asked me a
finish.
question. He just asked me a question.
That's fine.
Okay,
What
that's fine.
happened
Go
on
ahead.
the north side, there were violations, but there's a reason that there's a process that the United States Environmental Protection Agency, there's a process by which they administer and resolve violations. Sometimes it does involve paying fines, but it also involves remediation and correction actions. That's what occurred on the north side. And furthermore, the equipment that was on the north side that has been transferred to the south side has been tested and approved in EPA supervised tests to control and capture 99% of the emissions from the shredding process, which is well in excess of what the required standard is, which I believe is 81%. So the EPA itself, the United States EPA itself, has said this equipment works as it should. And again, I understand what you are pointing out, that there were issues on the north side. They were resolved and they do not apply. Clearly, you've cited chapter and verse from the large recycling facility permit rules, but if the city were reading them and applying them in the same way that you were, I don't think we'd be sitting here still talking about this. I think this project would never have gotten to this point. So clearly, that's not the proper reading of it per the city who administers those rules.
Mitchell, I'm going to ask, we only have about a minute left. Roberto,
Thank you.
second, and then and thank you for, I don't know who it was that pointed out that Liliana had not spoken. Liliana is writing notes, so she is making her point on the sticky notes. So thank you very much for the person who pointed that out. Roberto?
Okay, thank you. You know, Mitchell, you mentioned what the city had interpreted, and we wouldn't be right here again today if the city viewed that everything you were doing was on the up and up. Let's be real about this. I mean, you know, if we're talking real, I mean, if I go and I build a house next to you, and I go and I have an explosion like you all did on the north side, you're probably not going to want me to be living next to you, man. And I don't care how much you sit there and say, "Oh, well, we're going to fix this or we fix that." The point is you've already demonstrated what you will do with such a facility. Your actions spoke on behalf of what the company did. Now, the city has rules in place in the large facility recycling permit, and those rules specifically say that the city can deny a company in which people are currently employed and continue to work there if the company has similar violations. Now, it was your company's decision to go ahead and build that facility without getting all the required permits, without going and finalizing all the permits. That was their choice. It was nobody told them to do that, right? I mean, I'm not gonna go if I don't have a driver's license, go out and try to, go buy something if I'm not permitted to do it before I actually get the permit. That was your company's choice to do that, man. Now, again, that being said, the city has rules in place for reasons, which you just mentioned. Part of those reasons are to ensure that companies that have demonstrated their inability and unwillingness to abide by certain rules and regulations can be denied. Now, your company has violated on multiple occasions the responsibility that was entrusted to it when it took over the General Iron operations from the Lakota family or whoever Matt mentioned that you purchased it from. You've already demonstrated it, man. You guys had your chance. You guys went, you did it. You had explosions, you had continuous violations. Now you're coming by my house and you're saying, oh, we're going to build this thing and trust us now, even though we've already failed on multiple occasions, trust us now that everything's going to be okay. And we have to sit here and worry about the health of our families, our property values, and our well-being for what? What are we getting out of it? We're not getting nothing, man. So, I really hope that the city takes these considerations and follows its own rules, its own guidelines, and denies this permit because you're putting our lives at risk. Matt's been sitting here and he's been telling you about rules with the EPA, the issues and concerns. According to the World Health Organization and the EPA, the particulate matter limits that are currently used by the US EPA are well below, or I'm sorry, well above what they should be set to. And the Biden administration is currently reconsidering setting those rules to lower levels to be in compliance with the rest of the world. Why are we
Roberto, I
rushing this permit
apologize for cutting you
process?
off.
We
We're
need to go
beyond our
ahead.
time.
Thank you so much. All right, I'm
Thank
done.
you.
Thank you.
Mitchell, I'm going to have you hold. I apologize. We need to move on to the next question. I'm also noting that I'm not hearing from LC Davis. Mr. Davis, if you'd like to respond to anything, please do so now so that we can move on to the next question. Do you have any comments, Mr. Davis? You're on mute if you're speaking. I can't hear you. Okay. We're going to move on to the next question. This is part of the lived experience question. Is there anything else that you want people who are working on this proposal to know or think about based on your experience as a community member? Mr. Davis, would you like to speak on this question? Thank you for the person who's assisting him. The question is based on lived experience. Is there anything else that you want people who are working on this proposal to know or think about based on your experience as a community member? Does Mr. Davis have a comment? Okay, I'll open it up to anyone else. Yes.
I just want to, I'm speaking for General Iron itself and RMG of us moving. And I heard people speaking on this living South illness towards General Iron and this, that, and the other. But I think they're just speaking because they don't want us. We have families, we have people that we have to support. So I think General Iron only helped me and my family. I know the community, well, y'all speaking of the community of the South, but thank you. And I hope that you will grant us our permit for RMG Southside. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll go ahead and unmute you. Does anyone else have a comment on this question? Yes, Matt.
I put it in the chat. I just, as somebody who grew up working class with a single mom, I know that for her, this process would be incredibly frustrating to give feedback for this, given the fact that the meeting schedule has changed multiple times. I think it's really hard as somebody charged with the pastoral and spiritual care of this community to hear over and over again mothers crying, fearing for their children. I'm tired of being told by people who don't live in the community that the analysis says that the air quality is fine, but mothers cry that their children are sick, especially knowing that many of those women are survivors of violence. And what does it say when our city can't even listen to their concerns and follow the best practices for the health impact assessment? I think it's important to know that community members were willing to die to stop this to happen with a 30-day hunger strike. And for those, especially those who own RMG or who are upper management at RMG, it's important to understand how all of these impacts stack on top of each other. Being in an immigrant family and perhaps having to work more time because people who are undocumented are often underpaid, and how much cumulative burden that takes when you've got to take off work and you don't have paid vacation, but then you've got to go to the ER because your child has had an asthma attack. That in Chicago, the life expectancy gap between Lincoln Park and the southeast side of Chicago is 30 years. You say, don't blame us. But what I am saying is scientifically, if there is more particulate matter, there's a lower life expectancy. That is a demonstrable scientific fact. Moreover, I believe women when they say that they feel unsafe. And I believe it when it's suspect when the lived experiences of people living in this community do not reflect the data, especially when scientists have called the data that has been input into this process has been called deficient. And the UIC of School of Public Health and NRDC have put out a 30-page memo articulating all of the scientific deficiencies in that data. And the fact that this process seems to be rushed over the holiday season has caused a great amount of duress for people who are already stressed and working quite hard this season.
Thank you, Matt. Roberto?
All right. Hey, I just want to say this. I was not too long ago. I was gentrified out of South Chicago because of all the new housing developments there, and the city apparently isn't helping us in that regard. And I come to the east side thinking that things are going to be nice and better, but it seems like instead we're caught between the gentrification in South Chicago and the dirty industry that's all being piled up in one location on the east side. Now, my family, the people I love, and myself are the people that are being affected by this. And I think that, if you're going to put our lives at risk, that you definitely need to do additional work on ensuring that safeguards are in place. Now, as I mentioned before, the Biden administration is looking at the levels of particulate matter. You know this, everybody pretty much knows this, and they are due to revise the levels that are set mid next year. So the city should be responsible for doing its due diligence to make sure that whatever decision it makes is not made before we get the final results of that assessment by the federal government. That being said, I think overall what we have seen is that RMG, in its management of General Iron, has shown that they are incapable or unwilling, or they were unwilling at least. Maybe they've changed their thoughts now. However, when General Iron was placed in their care on the north side, they have demonstrated their failures to properly protect area residents and to ensure that the facility was operating according to guidelines. Now, as I mentioned, according to the Chicago rules for a large recycling permit, I believe I mentioned what specific regulation that fell under. Um, the city has a right to refuse the permit. It was it was RMG's decision to go ahead and build their facility before all the permits were guaranteed. They did not have to do that. They made that decision. It was a poor decision, just like the poor decision they made to let the facility on the north side deteriorate, explode, and all that other stuff. They've demonstrated their poor decision making. It is not the city's responsibility to support that. The city's responsibility is to us, the residents of the southeast side, to ensure that industry that comes into our area not only is protecting the well-being of us and our families, but also is providing some realizable benefit to the people that live within the community, and that we are not harmed health-wise, we are not harmed economically, we are not displaced, and that things are done in a way that assists us in our ability to live our lives. This development is not that. The city has every right, based on regulations, based on city ordinance, to refuse this permit, and I strongly suggest that the city do so, particularly because of the company's demonstrated inability to manage this site in accordance with rules and regulations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roberto. Go ahead, Mitchell, and we are going to end this particular question with you. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Thank you. Robert keeps returning to what went on the north side, and I sense that his statements that under RMG management there were violations refers to the explosion, which I'm not going to sit here and tell you it didn't happen. It happened. But his suggestion seems to be that occurred because we don't care, or we wanted that to occur for some reason that I can't figure out. I'm not quite sure in what world any business operator would want their equipment to explode, imposing potential danger, which thankfully the city's various agencies said there was none after that explosion in Lincoln Park, and downtime and costly maintenance. What we did after that was we investigated with the supervision. In fact, the city investigated, and further safeguards were put in place. The same safeguards that have now been installed on the south side. So the continued harping on RMG's, sounds like wanton, disregard for the rules. I'm just not sure the basis for that. And if you're talking about the explosion, I find it somewhat absurd to suggest that was some sort of intentional act.
Mitchell, I'm going to have to stop you there because we have less time for our last question. We really want to get to our last question. So I'm going to ask you to hold off. Please make more comments on your chat, and we will make sure they get on the board. If we can move to the last question, Ryan. So our last question for the evening is, looking forward, beyond the permit decision, what should we be aware of as we embark on other policy or process change initiatives? Do you have any specific recommendations? Who would like to raise their hand first? Go ahead, Roberto.
I think that the city needs to reevaluate the permits, specifically the permitting process, specifically because if the city allows this RMG permit to go through, basically what they are saying is that other companies can be allowed to basically outsource additional pollution to subsidiaries that they manage. Again, as I mentioned before, RMG operates multiple companies on the same site that are each involved in different aspects of the similar process. Um, that being the case, if the city allows this permit to go through, it is essentially saying that other companies, such as Ford, for example, can easily go and if they want to, increase their allowable pollution. They don't have to apply for more stringent EPA or other permits. All they have to do is essentially create a small subsidiary and go and basically outsource the pollution to those companies. So I think the city really needs to look and evaluate their permitting process when it comes to the cumulative impact that is allowed under the permits to be emitted by a single entity, a single company, regardless of again, RMG is a management firm. They manage multiple subsidiaries, and I don't think that that's right. I think that the city again really needs to evaluate that impact, and particularly the impact that the decision will allow in those specific cases. So beyond this specific permit, I think that this process as a whole needs to be reevaluated. The city has provided some avenue for community dialogue, but I think that there needs to be also a better demonstration that the suggestions, recommendations, and other things by community members is actually taken seriously. I have as of yet, I have not really heard, if any, community residents that are sitting here saying that they really support this development. So the city has every right to refuse this permit. If the city goes ahead and allows this permit, I think you're sending us a message that our voices really have no impact on your decision making. So beyond this specific permit decision, have several other recommendations, but I don't want to hog the floor here, so I'll let other people speak on this.
Okay, we need to get back at 7:12. We have 3 minutes left. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment about specific recommendations? Go ahead, Matt.
I recommend, I implore, dare I say, order in the name of God that the city deny the permit. It will have an adverse effect on public health in an already overburdened community. The city, regardless of what the city and RMG have done or decided, the city needs to listen to the people and the residents of the community and their serious concerns about public health, as well as the public health community's insistence that the permit to be denied based on data. Moreover, based on the authority of the Public Health Commissioner to act in the best interests of the public and protect public health. Why have a permitting process if you're going to give the permit anyway? The city must deny the permit.
Thank you, Matt. They're getting ready to move us into the main room. Are there any last thoughts?
Yeah, if I have 30 seconds or so.
30 seconds, Mitchell, go for it.
The city has laws and regulations, and those are what govern here. Now, I understand that you guys view them as not protective of public health. Totally understand that. And I will fight to the death for your right to petition your lawmakers to change them. That being said, the laws exist as they are written. And what the city is doing right now is wantonly ignoring their own laws and regulations. So.
Thank you, Mitchell. If you could see what I see on my screen, we have 37 seconds. Does anyone else have another comment?
Clarify the law that we're saying is the Fair Housing Act and the Civil Rights Act, and the city has an obligation, a statutory obligation under Title VI and Title VIII of the House to advance fair housing and integration and not further perpetuate segregation by relocating all of the industry from the North Branch Industrial Corridor to the south and west sides of the city in communities of color.
Thank you, Matt. All
think
right, we have
we
10
look-
seconds.
And I also say that under the city's own recycling facility permits under 2112 and 11.4, page 3, publication 4, the city has every right to deny it.
Everyone
Recording
for
in
your
progress.
comments. I was able to visit all of our breakout sessions, and we appreciate your very detailed responses and your heartfelt answers. It is deeply appreciated. And as we are waiting for everybody, I'm going to ask our facilitators and note takers to be ready to report back on the discussions from your room. So James, if you can confirm that everyone is back.
Yes, everybody should be back from their breakout rooms.
Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone for your participation. We are now moving into the section that we call Group Harvest, and this is where we are asking facilitators, note takers to share back from the conversations, dialogues that occurred in your room. So I'm going to be calling individuals by group and asking for you to please share on the 4 different areas. And again, we ask you to try to be concise to make sure that we hear from everyone present. So I will call our facilitators from group number 1. And I believe we had Kirsty. And I don't see the name of the facilitator.
That was me, Patrick.
Patrick, please.
Sure. So, so prompt number 1, speaking about the benefits, there was mostly saying that, you know, if there's a benefit to industry, not to community. The other, I thought this is a really interesting take. Like, there's a potential benefit to CDPH if we don't issue the permit, which is just a really interesting. There's a potential benefit that could be done. Burden, there was a lot of discussion of burden. On an already burdened community area, group of people, system and structures within, there's just no end of this keeps happening on the southeast side, so it's already overburdened. Don't do it anymore. I think in terms of lived experience, there was a number of, like, there were lived experiences being cited throughout the entire conversation. So like really good stuff that I think we'll be able to pull from the responses to the first 2 prompts, as well as the specific one about lived experience. And like being forward thinking, there were a number of like some really concrete, like if you're looking at a community area that is environmental injustice, like that has damage that has been done to it before, start with no when anyone wants to come in with something that needs a sort of toxic assessment. If it needs that, then the answer is no. Like, just start with no, but prove that you can. But also the strong suggestions of like community engagement needs to be involved from the very beginning of this process, and that the recommendations for the city, like, we really need to align our actions with our words and our Healthy Chicago 2025. And the suggestion that doing things like issuing a permit in this community area is direct conflict with those principles that we've stated are ours. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. We'd like to now move to room 2, and that would be Facilitator Dwight. And also to be supplemented by Dante if there are any other additional things that are missed.
I apologize. I didn't realize I was on mute. There was some silence because it was felt that that particular first question was meant more so for the city to get ways of finding out or justification for permitting. Some of the benefits were that individuals weren't against the permit if it was already EPA, and that was one individual that kind of shared that. But for the most part, didn't really see any benefits. Some felt that jobs had already been promised. For the second, the burdens were increased traffic, concerns of explosions and fires, city not adding additional burden to an already burdened community area. The third was more mild cases of rare cancers, again, additional traffics. The concern was that experts like UIC and Harvard had shared, and that feedback wasn't being taken in consideration by the city. And the fourth was the city not imposing any additional burdens, looking at ways that could be, that the southeast side could be improved, like Washington High School, looking at additional ways of giving more resources to schools that weren't as benefited as other communities on the north side. Anything else that I might have left out?
No, I think I'll just add that, there's a big concern about a mining project that they're hearing about. They're very concerned about it. It's called the Invert. And also communities wonders what the city's doing to bring businesses to the southeast side. And they're concerned about all these big box buildings, warehouses that are being built, and who is occupying them.
Thank you so much to both of you. I'm going to move on now to room number 3 and inviting Jen and Jennifer to share results from that room.
Great, thanks so much. In terms of the potential benefits to the community, there were comments about the company bringing employment to hundreds of people, 80% of whom are minority, that these were jobs that were good jobs with healthcare and benefits, that this project was revitalizing a brownfield and bringing, contributing to and supporting really the infrastructure of the city at large by operating a state-of-the-art recycling facility. Potential burdens, of course, were concerns about the facility's impact overall on a community that's already highly impacted, where there are high rates of asthma and respiratory health issues, and that really the cumulative impact of this potential project and other industry already located in the area, and then some specific concerns about the proximity of the facility to schools and the impact on teachers and students. In terms of lived experience, there were some nice recommendations about, wanting this community to see positive things proactively introduced to the communities, noting, for example, like a rec center in Pullman, and that it would be good to have that kind of development cited in the community. Also some discussion, I think, that hasn't been raised yet about how safe and clean the current facilities are that operate in that area, and what working conditions are like for folks employed in these industries in their community.
Recording stopped.
And then going forward, there were some process recommendations about ensuring that we had Spanish speaking, or that the process was friendly to
recording in progress
residents. Some concerns about whether or not we had done everything we needed to do to ensure that the forum was for residents only and not for people who lived outside the community. A desire for more transparency and accountability overall in this process of permitting, and ensuring that community hears about these things long before we're well into processes of approving things. Some notes about just shortcomings overall in the regulatory process that may need to be addressed going forward, both at the federal level and in terms of city regulation. And then one that was quite specific about, thinking about other things that we could be doing to support the community in terms of addressing environmental concerns. For example, eliminating financial qualifications from things like getting lead pipe replacement done. Jennifer, anything you'd add?
That was a good summary.
Thank you so much. We are going to be moving on, and I am going to request that our facilitators try to be as concise as possible. We want to respect everyone's time. So I am moving on to room number 4 and inviting Walanza and James to share summaries from room number 4.
Walanza can't. Let's see if we can get you. There you go.
Okay, there I go. All right, there I am. Okay, for question number 1, the benefit, according to some of the participants, would be strictly for the company and the city, but then we had others that talked about jobs being provided within the community and economic development. Number 2, there were concerns about pollution and health. Some of the health issues that they brought up was cancer, children that had asthma. They also talked about traffic and pollution. But then we had another participant that expressed the fact that there are a number of other organizations that are within the south side, on the southeast side of Chicago, that come in and out with trucks, and it has not increased the level of pollution within that community. For number 3, was lived experience. We had one participant that had been over on the southeast side for the past 50 years and talked about the hopes of economic development, how past businesses have left. But then we had other participants that talked about the pollution within the Calumet River and how for years they have wanted that to be cleaned up, and they are fearful that bringing in this company, it would create and cause additional pollution. And then moving forward, they expressed concerns about city not supporting small businesses within their community. The concerns about legislators receiving funds from lobbyists and making it harder for them to receive funding from those that particular group. James, did I miss anything?
No, I would just say that our group had differences, but it was wonderful that everyone was heard and everybody was very respectful of each other and gave each other time. Some of the things that they raised were, some people would say that a development would bring jobs. The company would bring jobs into the area, which are sorely needed. And then some of the other participants said that it might bring jobs, but there's nothing to guarantee that the jobs would go to people in the community. So that was one thing. Also, I believe that all of the people in our group, regardless if they supported the permit or did not, I think they each expressed some thought that the process and the way that the city looks at these things in the future would have to change just based on the nature of the industry and things like the HIAs also should include the effects of these plants in Northwest Indiana, which also have an effect on people who live in that area. And that's, yeah, so that's also something. And then somebody else brought up the US Steel plant that was torn down about 20 years ago. And there have been plans to turn that into something like business or parks. And they don't want to see the same thing happen here where businesses turned away and it just lies vacant. But then someone else pointed out that developers have gone to that site and determined that it wouldn't be worth their investment because it's so polluted. So each of these points are brought up, but they're very, very good sides to each of the arguments too.
And I guess just to round it off, I just want to say that everyone felt that there should have been more community engagement and involvement from the beginning of the entire process.
Thank you so much. I am again reminding our facilitators for the sake of time to please try to be concise. We do have 2 more reports to be shared. And so I'm inviting from room 6, facilitator Miguel to share. And am asking then facilitator from room 7 to also be ready to report back. Miguel, whenever you're ready.
He's muted.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So just really quickly, as far as benefits, I had a very quiet room, but for the most part, what group came out of that conversation was that it's beneficial for growth, job opportunity. Businesses will bring other businesses into the community. As far as burdens, if this proposal doesn't get approved, people will lose their employment and they would have to leave the community itself. And another burden would be heavy traffic. Lived experience, we've had people who've worked for the company for 38 years, fortunately enough, not experienced any respiratory health issues. So, and last but not least, as far as looking forward, the time frame, there should be a limit on the time frame. It shouldn't take as long as it did. Too long, would like to have the process sped up.
Thank you so much, Miguel, and thank you for being concise. Inviting room number 7 to report back, please.
Good afternoon. For the sake of time, I'm going to defer to my note taker, Kate. She has much of the notes and I could not see a lot of them, and I think she can be very concise.
Thank you, Antonio. Kate?
Yes, we heard that recycling is a benefit, but we also heard that the industry benefits wealthy people at the cost of local residents, and that we heard that this process actually benefits the city in the way that it's been framed. In terms of burden, we heard that the process is upholding racist systems, that the burden of pollution is on community, and that the burdens are far greater than any of the benefits. Again, we had a rich discussion with many people sharing their lived experience. We heard that the community has suffered too much from the burdens of pollution, lack of investment, lack of representation, and that this is going to further harm people. And then we heard, for looking forward, that we need to change the way that we do our meetings, that we need to be thinking about cumulative impacts, and that we also need to change the way that we do things. And this means air quality ordinances, legislations, and other actions to move us in a different direction.
Thank you so much, Kate. This concludes the breakout rooms. I am going to hand it back over to Megan, and Megan can give a high level response about what happened in the main room. But also wanted to take this time to thank everyone. And again, everyone's participation. I know that some of these questions were not easy questions to answer. It is appreciated, your discussion, your suggestions moving forward. Thank you for the opportunity to facilitate. I'm going to hand it back over to Megan to close us out for the night.
Ms. Willa, did you want to give a brief summary of the discussion in our room, and then I'll close?
Yeah, and I will probably not repeat anything for the interest of time, because I'm all about less ending. So again, robust conversation, some contention around benefits and burdens. The only two things I perhaps want to lift up is that no community is monolithic. And so standards that when the city is thinking about impact, it should think specifically about that community. And there's a question about whose standards, what standards are being used to evaluate impact on community. And third option of sort of lifting up a kind of community advisory board in an HIA process that would sort of hold folks accountable. There's lift up of a protest that is happening, and that folks are, of mixed mind about historical impact and health impact on communities of color. So take it away, Megan.
Thanks very much, Pasquella. Are folks now able to see the slides once again? Okay. Yes. So just very briefly then to conclude, I want to first offer gratitude to Norma and to Consuela, our lead facilitators, and to all of our individual breakout session facilitators from the Chicago Department of Public Health. We appreciate you for joining us today to make sure that we could collect all of this insight. And beyond that, I want to offer appreciation once again to all of the community residents and other stakeholders who have given us of their time. As a reminder, what we did today was part of the assessment step of the HIA process. You all have offered direct insights from your lived experience or from your expertise. This is being analyzed as part of the HIA, and it will inform our recommendations and be summarized in our report. As I indicated in the chat, even things like the Jamboards, the artifacts from today's session will be publicly posted and will become a part of the formal HIA. If you were not able to share everything that you intended to today, we have a survey available online. I will now place the link in the chat box as well for anyone who is interested in giving us additional information on these questions. In terms of our next steps, we want to begin just with an opportunity for feedback. As with the last session, if you'd like to enter into the chat, one big takeaway that you have from today, anything that worked well about today's session and what we could do differently next time. We have reformatted this process in response to your direct feedback, and we will continue to take that into consideration as we plan for the third session. And then finally, that session number 3 will be scheduled for January. Information will be shared by email, and we take seriously the feedback that we received today about the importance of giving more lead time, having a very clear plan that is shared broadly in advance of the session. And so we will commit to doing a better job of that for our third session. If you'd like to review any of the materials from today's discussion, we will be posting those on our website, and we will also be adding the recordings as soon as they are available. If you have further feedback more generally on the session, you can email us at emvcomments@cityofchicago.org. So with that, with my thanks to everyone on today's call, I wish you well. I wish you a safe and happy holiday season. And we look forward to rejoining with all of you in January for HIA session number 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night to everyone. Buenas noches.
Francisco, make sure you put your thing in the chat.